Dan Cameron, partner in Alyve. Two guests here today. So we've got Aaron, a principal consultant, and Bala, who we've been working with. Maybe you want to introduce yourself, Bala?
Yeah, so project manager for one of the energy retail companies. I won't tell you who it is, but maybe you'll be able to guess as we go along.
Thank you. So today what we're doing is we're talking about how you take a corporate strategy and actually execute it. Both are hard. Designing a strategy is often complex and it's a big exercise in alignment and getting agreement. But then the delivery, perhaps is even harder. And there's so many examples, so many stories of strategies not working, of transformations failing. And so I think that's what we're going to sort of dig into today. But while we do it, we're also going to be doing, at the same time, just a little beer tasting. So the first one we're going to be trying here, guys, is this one. So that's a New Reality California IPA. So have a little sip. And at the end, I think we'll just do a little, we'll ask you which one you prefer. You had a lot of, ambitious strategy, a lot of stuff your organisation was trying to do, and you had some really good practices in your delivery function. But I think there was a view that there's probably an opportunity to do things better.
Yeah, so we definitely felt that there was a need and a desire to shape how we were doing things better. Largely that came from the volume of projects that we were trying to do, knowing that we were going into significant transformation. And attempting to do there was break down individual projects, or break down the way in which we delivered these individual projects so that they weren't just individualised. We wanted to have more business ownership of these projects and not have them seen as just individual packets of work that we're trying to push and shove for attention, but largely so that the business could run streams of work and we could deliver based on what the business prioritised was important in those streams.
Yep.
So that's really where we're aiming to try and remove some of that noise of individual project delivery and lift our delivery strategy just a little bit higher than what it was at the time. You're right in saying, yes, our foundations were quite detailed. We had a lot of good foundations from a PMO perspective. The artifacts and how we needed to go about doing that was well set in place, but a lot of that needed to change as part of how we went about setting up this new, approach to delivery, and I suppose probably the inception or the how we came up with ideas, how we then formulated those into projects, and then how we actually closed those out as delivered projects into our business.
Yeah, and so I think you've touched on some of the challenges in where transformation or execution can struggle. You're often trying to draw resources from BAU functions where you have experts who know what they're doing and are really critical to getting things right, but are time poor and just don't have the ability to jump in. The other thing I think you're talking about there, and this is something we really big on as well, is accountability, right? And so having really clear accountability for, what's your remit within a strategy, where are decisions made, how are those decisions made, and make sure that layers up all the way from, people down in the weeds, actually getting things done, all the way up to, the ownership of the general strategic structure and alignment. And that's hard work, right? And I think in that there can be a lot of friction. As you said, you call it noise, right? A lot of things that can go wrong, a lot of things that can compete for attention. Things like having a model where you might have a set of steps you want to go through in terms of how you think about a project, and sometimes a desire to move through some of those more quickly can lead to problems later on,
yeah,
right?
Definitely.
Yeah. So what sort of, encompasses, the delivery of a strategy? What are the elements of that?
A strategy delivery is basically a sequence of steps, right?
Yep.
And how do you get through each of those steps? Some of those steps are completely different to others.
Yeah.
But then when you end up operationalizing it to a point where your steps are almost seamless, that to me is what successful strategy implementation looks like.
Yeah.
It's not for today. It's not for the immediate future. I'm thinking, 5 to 10 years, and the further I can go ahead where I'm getting those benefits, the better it is for me. So whether you see an end point to strategy delivery I would think it is questionable because you're always then evolving what your next strategy is. But hopefully what you do see through the process is some of the benefits that you aimed to achieve starting to become BAU. And you then, as part of that delivery of strategy, when you start feeling, holy crap, we're actually doing it in a different way now, or we're achieving that, and that direction is, I can feel my footsteps down that pathway, is where I feel like that strategy delivery is actually successful. Yeah. Because as soon as you're doing that, you're starting to think about, well, what's my next strategic objective and how do I start my footsteps along the pathway to that?
I think it's worth us touching on how hard that actually is, because there are so many components in getting all of that right. There are so many different elements that all need to work together. And so you look into the language of project delivery and strategy being a set of projects that you execute and you deliver as a set of programs or whatever it might be. There's a lot to it. You have to think about strategic intent. What is the shape of what we look like? Then how do you turn that into a project plan of some sort that actually fleshes that out in more detail?
Yeah.
How do you then work out what that really means in terms of benefits that you're going to deliver? And how do you break that down into a set of steps that you execute and trying to hold yourself to account on actually delivering to the right scope, to the right timeline, to the right budget, but also bringing those benefits to life? So, and then you have the complexities of multiple projects all happening at the same time. You have the complexities of aligning people. 3 project managers in a room and them agreeing can be a miracle, right? And then you have maintaining the confidence of the executive as you're doing all this, right? So,
definitely.
They want to know that things are being fulfilled in a particular way. There's a lot of decisions, a lot of things go wrong as they do, It's sort of like there's a design problem here. You've got to get your design for your organization around how you're governing your strategy really nailed. Doing this well is the first strategy problem you should solve. Because if you don't have it, then the rest of your strategy is going to be at risk. The old classic of getting clear on where you want to head, and then you have to get everyone lined up, all your people. You have to get your processes defined. What are we really trying to do here? And we did a lot of work around how are the different, what is our overarching workflow and what do the processes look like that fit in there? And then your technology is how you really, it's sort of, virtualizing all of that so that it hangs all together. And the point, I guess, is, you do that well and suddenly changing the work obligations or workflows of your people, they're not as focused on the administration and reporting, because that starts to happen, and instead they're focused on actually just delivering.
Yeah, and if I think about the approach that we took and how we went through the change that we went through, we didn't have majority of the answers anywhere, like at the start, maybe starting to form them in the middle, right? But if I think about that governance step that we went through towards the beginning, there was a lot of wants of this is kind of how we see it working. This is the people that we think are going to sit in these roles and how we would like them to operate. And I remember we went through the whole matrix of every single task that might sit in the process as it is. And largely it's like, oh my God, how are we going to go through each of these? But we, rather than going through them individually, we kind of went, well, conceptually, this is what we want that person to look after. This is what we want this group of people to look after. And then I felt like when we went through this matrix of, all right, every single task and every single person involved in the process, we were able to just loosely go, well, that's clearly that person, because we've conceptually gone, this is what I would want them to look after, right?
Yeah. And we kind of had agreement with people so that when we got to that point, it actually for them was like, oh, I understand that, right?
Yeah.
So,
But I think that's, if I think about the steps that we go through along the way, conceptually, as you talked about, Aaron, you've got this vision of where you want to get to, but it doesn't necessarily need to have answers, right? As you work through, you're going to need to find answers. You're going to need to find what's the solution to this problem or whatnot. And it's probably, when I'm looking at a strategy and implementation of strategy, it's easier to find solutions for these sorts of things than in some project delivery of their own where you're dealing with system and their constraints and whatnot. Majority of strategy is just about people change, right? Yep. And so as long as you can get people on board for that change, then largely it should be able to flow, right?
Yeah.
And if they're on board for each step along the way, which some will, some won't, right? And change with people is always a challenge. But yeah, you should be able to then find those answers as you go rather than needing all of them before you even start.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, you know, in Alyve, we talk about humankind technology, right? And that's really that idea that technology is fantastic, but really it's all about making technology work for people and getting people to agree on what they want and getting alignment is sort of
Always fun.
So well, it's critical, right? So that by the time you get to a configuration or development of, you know, how you're thinking about a technology, you're actually 80% of the way there.
Yeah.
As opposed to that other way things happen sometimes. You might, you know, go straight into solutioning and then you just end up with a big amount of diversity. And that's where I think projects go wrong and you can go wrong and you can end up having a blowout, right? Like, yeah.
Mum says I'm cool.
This one is from Germany.
Frau Gruber.
It's apparently a straightforward IPA thing.
Double IPA.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. The next thing I want to talk about, did a lot of work around Jira configuration and a lot of work around, I guess, you know, around all of these elements around process design, but ultimately that was all about how do we get in place a system that's really going to support what you guys are trying to do.
Yeah.
And the big messages we got really early on were, you know, you really wanted a single integrated platform. It was really about making sure that the whole thing hung together. Reporting was a really big deal as well. We wanted to get that right. And it all had to tie back to, you know, your new governance model and how you're going to be working because, you know, when you started your new strategy, you really wanted to be on solid grounding for execution.
Yeah, and part of that was about we wanted our business leaders in those spaces and our, you know, project managers to take more ownership of those, right? So giving them that ownership meant that they needed a simple way to be able to, you know, tell the story of what's going on in their world, right? And make sure that our executives are across that and comfortable with how it's operating. So very important. You know, as we talked about earlier on, we had a number of really good processes that were in place, but part of those processes was a bit disjointed. It wasn't all in one location. We had multiple systems to do different things, you know, different documents that were flying around all over the place, sometimes not even being done. So we wanted to bring in more, you know, some rigidity where it was required, but largely the freedom for our project managers and our business leaders to be able to be a bit more controlling of their own world sort of thing.
Yeah.
Now, with that, you need to bring in some level of control to make sure that they're just either not reporting or not doing anything, because you can't have that, right? Our executive team needs to be across it and we need to be comfortable that they've got things under control. But you want them to be able to control it as much as possible.
Yeah.
And so we felt that, you know, in using Jira and going to Jira Premium for us gave us a lot of what we were after there, and we were able to build some of those mini constraints that we needed to have to force certain artifacts to be performed and certain checkpoints to be reached in order to, you know, get through a stage gate or whatnot in the project delivery. We felt that what we got at the end of the day really complemented what we were after. The secondary piece of that was the reporting element that sat alongside it. So being able to draw the information from Jira, but still giving the freedom to our project managers to, as I said, tell the story, right? So if I were to think about project management in our world, it's probably half of the job is telling the story, whether it's to your project team and getting them to buy in and come on board, or up to the executives so that they have the confidence or they understand the risks or they, you know, are aware of the issues at the right times. So to me, that is all storytelling, right? Now, do you get all of that just through flat reporting? You know, sometimes yes, but you need someone with good craft to be able to do that through flat reporting. So you want to have multiple ways in which you can present that story. Now, whether that's through conversation that our project managers are having, but through the financial pieces that we've added into Jira to be able to flow through to Confluence. We'll talk about it in a little bit, the AI component that sits on the back of that with Rovo, assisting our project managers to, kind of summarize key points of information so that goes into our reporting. But then having the different levels of, well, what's the detail required for different types of reports? Yeah. I think at the end of the day, when we've got project management, we're always going to have reporting of some description, right? Yeah. And trying to shirk away from that is probably unrealistic. Yeah. So understanding what our audiences are, who needs to know and when they need to know that information is really important. And I think what we were able to get out of these changes was a lot of the point me in the right direction of what that audience is after, right? If I'm sculpting the Rovo AI agent to say, this is aimed at a steering committee, right? Give me the information that a steering committee would actually be after and, raise up the high risks or whatnot. Cool. That's going to flag those things for me. Whereas my standard, project report that, goes out to the wider technology area, well, that should have more condensed, more specific information about that project in detail as opposed to the summary that's going up to the execs.
Yeah. One of the things you just said around empowering people, empowering your business to actually get on with the things that they should get on with is a really interesting point because it's a sign of maturity in execution, right? So, or in anything, any organization, if you've got confidence in your processes and your ability to dig into, be aware of problems and dig into them early if they occur, is critical to empowering your business to be able to do more quicker. And the counterfactual to that is a lot more rolls up to senior leadership to get much more involved in day-to-day decision-making. And that can be a real drag on the organization because, they get caught up on executional decisions, all the time. So having, this kind of, governance model that allows people to make the right decisions in the right way, but there's really good information flowing up and down is critical and takes a lot of work. A lot of organizations really struggle to get there on that.
Well, yeah, if you think about, I talked earlier about the implementation of the whole process of it. It started over a year ago. This is at least a year and a half of work in the making, probably even a half a year before that, planting seeds of this is where we want to go, right? And our senior management team had previously, over the years prior, had much of a closed door and needed to be involved in a lot of those decisions, right? So even day-to-day project decisions would be getting escalated to those steering committees and to those senior leadership people, right? So we really wanted to remove that, but it needed them to provide the confidence that, yes, the next level of people are ready to take on those decisions. So when we went through the strategy of what we were trying to achieve with this, part of it was letting that senior management team know we want them to focus on business strategy. That's where their minds should be. If that's looking at the next 5 to 10 years, that's where we believe that they should be aiming. The gap that then sits is how do we deliver the next year so that we're progressing each year from here to that 5 to 10 year strategy. We needed people that were able to translate, and this is the level that sat between, they needed to translate what our SMT were talking about for the 5 to 10 year strategy into the what am I delivering the next 1 to 2, right? The actual step required is this action, this project, this thing. So they need to be our advocates to push for those projects, leaving our senior management team to focus on this is where our business is heading. Right? And so getting that and planting that seed with them, and getting them to take that step back was incredibly important. And that's not an easy thing to do, right? Releasing that power to someone else, giving that trust, and I would talk about trust like every day of the week in this scenario, right? It is, you've got to trust those people that you're giving that power to, right? Because they will end up shaping the actual actions that are occurring in your business. That took a heap of work to get through that and reiteration of the strategy of where we want to go. Again, you're not going to have those answers when you're starting planting those seeds. Like that is a long piece of work to build those seeds, grow them into something that they can see. I can see that there's value in this. Getting through that was incredibly important for us, but also finding the right people to be that in between, the people that our senior management team would trust, the people that could work with our project delivery teams. They needed to have business representation. Right? So they had to come from the business, not necessarily from our project office. A couple of challenges that we needed to work through, and again, didn't know it at the start. Kind of had a few people that were like, yeah, they're probably the kind of person we're after.
Yeah.
But then finding enough of them was a challenge.
Yeah.
But people have really stepped up into that as well,
Yeah.
which is fantastic to see. So you're giving opportunities to people.
So those are your business captains, you've called
That's
them?
it, yeah. So our business captains, and then they're working alongside a program lead, right?
Yeah.
So instead of having one program of work where every single project for our business is sitting in, if I think about that, that's just like 40 projects that all are competing for priority. Right? That's a nightmare in my book, right? So now instead we've got 7 programs, and each of those is running their own ship. Right,
Yeah.
they each have their own steering committee, right? And what that means is that steering committee is guiding that, we call it a little forum, that program, that forum, to where it needs to be in 5 to 10 years' time,
Yeah.
and that's going to then be delivered year on year.
Yeah.
So they get to decide more of what's important for them. They get a budget. They get resources allocated to them to go, well, what am I doing? Now, is it fair for each forum? No. Like some forums are going to get much more cash budgeted towards them than other forums will, because of the importance that they have in the business or the direction that the business is trying to go towards. But what it did do is allow those programs, those forums, to largely decide their own fate. So when they wanted something else, well, they had to adjust for themselves. They had to decide what was important, not just raise it up to the other 40 projects and try and wave the flag to go, I'm really important here. It's just getting lost. And what we were finding is that, this is going back to the problem statements right at the start before this strategy was put in place. But what we were finding is that whoever had the shiniest sales pitch or the biggest problem, bang, priority goes to you and to hell with everything else, right? And that became problematic because some of the things that are actually really valuable just being overlooked. And the other side of it is that some projects don't stack up by themselves. They need to be considered as part of that business area's strategy of where they want to get to in 5 years' time. So I might not get benefits from this project on its own or the next project. But combined with that project and the next 2 that come after it, there is a big business benefit. I can't put all of that together into a single project because that's never going to get across the line. I'll never find the time of day for it. But now these programs can find the time of day because they know it's important for them.
Yeah. What you're really getting into there is challenge of strategy that has a lot of themes or pillars within it, and without a model that helps you assess how to deliver against some of those themes, you end up getting lost, and you end up getting, you can end up with prioritization of things that maybe, while they're important in the big picture, they also may mean that some of these strategic streams are just not being delivered in the way that is important for the organization. So it ends up meaning your strategic execution is sort of lumpy. It's not quite as smooth as it should be, and it means that if you're looking at a 3 or 5 year plan, some things will probably get done, but some things are going to get left behind, and they may then become a handbrake or an anchor on your whole strategy. And so what you've now got is the ability to, I think, prioritize much more sensibly within your strategic themes, and your ability to execute is more considered for what you're trying to achieve, so that overall you should see much more progress in your strategy over that sort of 3 to 5 year horizon.
Yeah, and so if I think about one of the things that we're enforcing on these forums, on these programs, is that they need to come up with their own strategy. So every year they're revisiting their strategy and they're requesting budget to deliver towards their strategy, right? Their strategy shouldn't necessarily just be for the next year. It's about how they, as you said, the 3 to 5, and then our senior management are looking at the 5 to 10, right? But each forum is saying, this is the direction that I'm heading, and this is how much money I need to do the projects which take me in the steps towards that.
Yeah.
Really valuable, because then when forums are having their project team meetings and whatnot, they can always come back to, well, here's an idea, here's something else that's coming up that we want to do, and I can come back to that strategy. And so that's an element that we've built into the Jira toolkit to go, all right, I'm doing this assessment of these ideas, I've got these initiatives, right? Number one, is it even worth doing? Right? I've got a pathway for that. So I'm doing this, T-shirt sizing, if you want to call it that, to understand, well, what's the cost? What's my benefit? And how does this stack up? How does it fit against the strategy? Is it down the pathway that we want to go? If it's not, it doesn't stack up, well, then let's just close it down right from the start. Some of these things that we've had in our business would have sat there as, yeah, we want to do that, but they've just sat there for 5, some of them 10 years.
Yeah.
Just sitting there like, we'll get to that eventually. It's like, well, at some point, just close the door on it and accept that we're not doing that, right? But it then gave a pathway of, hey, I've got a really good idea, but I don't know how to go about getting this up. Cool, I can get it in front of that forum. They will consider it. They will then have that conversation back to our business areas that are having, I've got these ideas and whatnot. There's now an avenue, a much clearer avenue of how I would go about getting an idea into an actually fully formulated project. And so that technology change that we've done through Jira really assists us in doing that. It assists our teams, our project teams, to assess them and then, put them to the side and say, look, there's something here, but I just don't have all the information yet. Cool, I can just put that to the side. We can keep plugging away on that behind the scenes.
Yeah.
It's not our priority work at the moment, but it's just something else that when I've got a gap between projects or, when I'm waiting for someone to respond to me about key information, all right, I can just pick that Jira ticket up and off I go, right?
So if we had any, key lessons you wanted to share with anyone out there in the world who's dealing with strategic execution or delivering a strategy, what's a good takeaway for how to get started and where to begin thinking about it?
When you've got the concept of a strategy, you've got the idea that's forming, right? Mm-hmm. You don't need it to be perfect before you start sharing it, right? Start those conversations, start them early, right? Yeah. So you might not choose to use everyone's feedback because everyone will have feedback on your strategy and where you want to go and whatnot. But start feeding and start planting those seeds because the earlier you can do that, the better you will be in the long run. Yeah. You won't have all the answers. And I think as leaders, we always feel like I need to show the path and the path needs to be clear. Mm-hmm. No, with strategy, I don't think that that's the case. I think we want to try and share it as early as possible. And as long as you have a direction, the direction becomes clearer every step you take towards that direction.
With a client who, and somebody mentioned that, and it really stuck with me in the sense that a big part of what you're doing with strategy is not actually defining where you're heading, it's actually getting everyone to agree on a direction, right? Yeah. And so those, conversations that you have to get people to just kind of start walking in the same direction is just really critical. But
I would also say that if you become crystal clear on where your strategy is actually going to be and what the finished result looks like, and then you present, that's not going to make it. It's not going to get there because people will shut it down because it's not where they're thinking. You need to guide towards that direction. Unless the direction is well and truly in the wrong, east versus west sort of, range, like you can assist people towards that. And you'll learn as well individually. You'll learn, okay, where can I push? Where can I pull? How are we directing there? But if you try and come with something solidified, you're just going to meet brick walls most of the time.
So which beer did you guys like? We've got the pink milk. That was the last one we had. We had the New Reality, which was the first one we had. Oh, sorry. And then we've got Mum Says It's Cool, which was the second one. So votes from you guys?
Surprisingly, I'm going for the pink milk. Like that was.
I did not pick you as a pink milk guy, but all right.
No, I've never been a pink milk guy. It was good.
It was refreshing.
Yeah.
I quite enjoyed pink milk. I'm going for the pink milk.
What are you going, Dan?
Look, I'm actually going for Mum Thinks I'm Cool. Because, I think she does. Hey, Mum.